I want to share the content that I personally miss. Like, I don't really create content just to, get likes or followers or whatever. I don't, like, to me, it's like, that's the natural, like, response. Like, I feel like the more energy I put into something, the more energy I get back as well from people. But yeah, with, like, quizzes or with these visualized content, I was like, that's just how I understand concepts and learn the best. And I couldn't really find at that moment, I'm sure there's a lot now, but at that time I didn't really find that. So I was like, I'll make it and I'll share it. And, luckily people seem to enjoy it as well, find it useful. So it's just luck again that,
Well, you put in a lot of hard work
for sure,
into those visualizations, right?
Yeah, but the fact that people kind of like align with that, like that they also need that, I think it's I don't know. I'm very, I guess, grateful that people are also very supportive of the stuff that I do, and that it's also useful to people.
Hello and welcome to episode 11 of the Frontend Masters podcast. I'm Mark Urbanski, CEO of Frontend Masters, and today I sit down with Lydia Hallie. She is a developer who started at a very young age and got a lot of success through writing on dev.to and these various platforms about the intricacies of JavaScript and how it works. She went on to create a book on design patterns, has a really fascinating career going from a developer to DevRel and beyond. So it's a very fun conversation, and I hope you enjoy it. Hey, Lydia.
Hey.
Welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
So a couple of warm-up questions. First, you've traveled a lot. So what are some of your favorite places, or at least one?
I would say Iceland. I went there when I was 18. I lived there for a couple months, and I just had my driver's license, so I just road tripped like around the entire country, and it was beautiful. You saw like the northern lights, and you had the waterfalls, and just meeting a lot of very interesting people as well. But just the landscape is so different from anything that I've ever seen or been to. So hopefully I can come back there at some point. But
yeah, Northern Lights. Yeah. In Iceland is literally on my bucket list.
Beautiful, yeah. So, you have to see it.
That'd be awesome.
Stunning.
Are there any special skills you have that people might not know about?
I can't think of anything.
What about you're getting your pilot's license, right?
Oh, yeah. I wouldn't call that a skill just yet. I still have to become good at it. But,
active development.
Yes. No. I am getting my pilot license now, hopefully at least. Just building hours and, doing a lot of exercises and doing solo flights, which it's really fun. It's also kind of confrontational because, like, being in flight school, it kind of shows certain parts of my personality that I can kind of hide when I'm, writing software, just kind of not actively being in a vehicle where I have to actively not crash based on my own decisions. I'm like, okay, I really got to focus now and do everything right. But yeah, it's really fun. You learn so many new skills about, engines and just physics and I don't know, all the things that I would have otherwise never been exposed to. And yeah, it's really fun.
So have you gotten to fly yourself?
Yeah.
By yourself?
Yes.
That's awesome.
Well, yeah, it is. It's fun. It's yeah, I don't know. Also like psychologically, it's amazing that you can kind of, or that I trust myself enough to do that. Prior to starting that, like flight school, I was like, I would never trust myself enough to just fly my own plane and be the pilot there. But it's been all right. I'm hopefully I'll get better though. But it's cool. It's fun.
That's awesome. And you said you had like a cross country flight or something.
Yeah, well, you need to do that to get your license. So you're just, well, it's not much. It's just like you stop at 2 airports and then you fly back, and it's like a couple hours that you're flying, also on your own. But even just like the navigation part, it's like, so we're doing it kind of the old-fashioned way. So every time I have to do it, I'm like, why can't I just use an app for this? Why can't I just use like software for? I don't trust my brain enough to make the right calculations. But yeah, it's fun to kind of do it the old-fashioned way and not be spoiled with tech. But that's still like, I'm sure that in a couple years, people will only be using apps for it. So like even students, but it's good. It's fun.
Cool. So what is your background? Like, where did you grow up?
So I grew up in a small village in the Netherlands, like the middle of the country. It's called Soest. And I went to school till I was 18. My dad has always worked in tech. and my mom was just very supportive of everything that I, wanted to do. She always gave me a lot of freedom. When I was younger, I wanted to become like a commercial pilot for the longest time. And then I got a bit older. I was like, that doesn't really fit with my personality. And I got introduced to, the first, I guess, programming language was kind of like Python. I mean, I didn't know it was programming. It was just kind of, basic commands to make like a snake game or something, very, very basic. And I, like, during my, I guess, like, high school, it's not a high school career, but, like, when I was a teenager, I had a, Tumblr blog, and there you could, like, change your layout or, like, the theme of your page, which wasn't HTML. It was, like, their own custom language, but I kind of got introduced to just how stuff worked and how it, like, mapped to, I guess now I know it's, like, the DOM, but back then I was just, like, random words that then made a nav bar or something.
Yeah, I just remember, I mean, I'm older than you, so we had MySpace.
And you could, like,
trick out your profile with, like, different custom cursors and stuff like that.
Exactly.
So it was pretty sweet.
Yeah, no, and then after I graduated high school, I still didn't know what I wanted to do because I hated school so much. I'm not a good student. I cannot, like, I hate it when people think that they have, like, authority, like teachers used to have. I was always, like, getting in fights with them and just being, I mean, now I'm, like, embarrassed. That was just really annoying. But I just didn't care about learning stuff that I wasn't really interested in. Like, I loved math and chemistry. But I used to have to study, like, ancient Greek and Latin. And I was like, why am I doing this? Why am I wasting, like, so much time just studying this? So, yeah, then I took a gap year. And then afterward, I got started with programming kind of professionally.
Cool. So your first experiences were writing Python. Was that in school, or you said your dad was into tech? Like, how did...
Yeah, I don't even remember how I got exposed to that. I know my dad always tried to, like, get me to write, like, small games with him. Like, I guess that was also Python. I mean, I don't even remember. I was so young and I wasn't paying attention to, the extensions that the files had. But I was doing it kind of myself or just out of myself when I was, I guess, like 14, 13. And that's... I saw the word JavaScript, and you had to Google how stuff worked, and I guess it was more jQuery, how stuff worked to make parts of that page, like interactive. But I didn't even know that was like a career or anything. It was just something that I did for fun on the side. And then later, this was around 2016 when I graduated high school, React was already getting bigger, and that's when,
So did you go to college then, or no?
No, I didn't go to college at all. I wanted to study what was it, like, not microbiology, but it was like a combination of microbiology and tech, so it was programming and biology. But then I was so not into the school system. I just didn't like it at all, and I figured, I just go to a boot camp for, like, to at least have some kind of certificate, because I was kind of not entirely sure that people would understand that I really enjoyed programming if I didn't have that. I mean, in hindsight, I really didn't need that. I didn't have to go to that boot camp. But yeah, I did that, and then right after, I got my first job as a JavaScript engineer, and that was already after, like, years of just being really, really focused on understanding kind of the internals of JavaScript and just web development in general, and I'm so glad that, that the stuff that I enjoy focusing on is also something that people really need right now, and is it's just useful for my career without needing to go to college, really.
That's awesome. So you didn't learn a lot in boot camp, or you did? Like, was it just kind of like going through the motions, or?
Yeah, I mean, so this was in 2017, and yeah, I think the boot camp was on React, Redux, also just, the basics of, like, CSS, HTML. What else did we do? I don't even remember. But, I mean, yeah, it's really just, like, introductory, I guess, everything. But I didn't learn a lot of new stuff, I think.
So you had already, like, self-studied to the point where you knew all of that stuff coming into the code?
Well, I think I did it alongside the boot camp. So they did introduce us to some new terms, but then on the side, I, wanted to do a lot of extra stuff to really understand the concepts a bit better. And then also, as I was doing that, I kind of started the, like, social media thing, because I wanted to share I didn't even want to share my journey with other people. That wasn't really my goal, but I just wanted to expand my network in tech, because I didn't really know anyone. Because again, like, no one really in my environment was into programming that way, at least my friends and people like that. And also they were all in college at that point, so I was just kind of the only one not going to college.
I grew up in a small town, and I'm from Minnesota, and there wasn't a whole lot of people like into tech as well. So it's like it's just like being the only person of your friend group into this.
It can feel lonely.
And there was no like social media back then at all. But so it's cool you found that.
Yeah.
I think I might have gotten first exposed to you through like quizzes that you did on Instagram. Was that like one of the first things? It was either that or your dev.to like visualizations.
Yeah, I don't remember which one I did first. It's all so long ago.
It's kind of like mixing together for me. Sounds like for you too.
For me too, yeah.
You were just putting a lot of stuff out there, right?
Yeah, well, because I don't know. I want to share the content that I personally miss. Like, I don't really create content just to, get likes or followers or whatever. I don't, like, to me, it's like, that's the natural, like, response. Like, I feel like the more energy I put into something, the more energy I get back as well from people. But yeah, with, like, quizzes or with these visualized content, I was like, that's just how I understand concepts and learn the best. And I couldn't really find, at that moment, I'm sure there's a lot now, but at that time, I didn't really find that. So I was like, I'll make it and I'll share it. And luckily people seem to enjoy it as well and find it useful. So it's just luck, again, that,
Well, you put in a lot of hard work.
For sure.
Into those visualizations, right?
Yeah, but the fact that people kind of, like, align with that, like, that they also need that, I think it's, I don't know. I'm very, I guess, grateful that people are also very supportive of the stuff that I do and that it's also useful to people. Yeah,
and I think there's a magic in having like fresh eyes towards something, like whereas a lot of us have been in the industry for a long while, whereas like wouldn't think to make a visualization for like kind of the basic concepts of JavaScript or something like that. But it turns out like everybody kind of needs that as a refresher. It's like, oh yeah, that's how JavaScript works. So it's like there is a magic of like you're learning something and you share it right away, like I mean, as you're doing it.
And I feel that now as well. The more I know, like I've often try to make a visualized post again, kind of on the internals, but now that I know so much about it, I can't stop. Like, I need to really define a certain scope for myself. It's like, this is where I stop, because otherwise, like, I'm writing and I'm going all the way to, like, the hardware binary parts of, like, this is how the memory is allocated, like, hardware, because now I know how much is involved, so now I know how much I don't know, and then I don't know where to stop. And I think if you are a bit more of a beginner, you don't know what you don't know, so then you feel more comfortable sharing it. It's like, this is the answer, where even though the answer is like 10,000 times more complicated. But that is like, I don't know, it's a funny thing that I'm like running into now. It's a weird problem. Like I'm glad that I shared it back then, but if I were to write it now, I would have made it so more complicated, and
you get deeper into the weeds as your knowledge grows.
Yeah, but like that's not a good thing. Like I think it's good to keep it kind of basic and just keep it like this is just how you could see it. But yeah, it's so that's also maybe why people that are a bit more experienced wouldn't do it so quickly, because they know how much is actually, or how much is like involved in everything. But
I'm going through that right now. I like really want to create this like workshop on like, JavaScript stuff, obviously, like building apps. And it's like, how do you really simplify things like from first principles? And it's like, I remember when I was first coming up in the industry and I wrote 300 posts, like so easy.
Yeah.
It was just like, firing off everything that I was learning.
Exactly.
And, like, I was just so excited about it. So it's like, that's probably advice to anybody who's earlier in their career. Like, that's the time to write. That's the time to, like, as you're consuming this stuff and you're, like, learning, you have light bulb moments, like, share those light bulb moments, because we all get to benefit from that, for sure.
But I think also, as long as people make sure that they don't share too many incorrect details, which I'm sure I do as well, but I often see just people, like, putting out so much content that isn't entirely correct, or actually sometimes very technically incorrect, and there's just so much like garbage on the internet now that it's getting so hard to find good resources. So I'm all for beginners, like sharing what they're learning and especially how it affects them and like maybe what they wish to see. But just be careful not to share stuff that is super technically incorrect. Don't just like copy paste ChatGPT, because that one is wrong so often, especially with programming and technical concepts, it's actually surprising. But yeah.
But by putting it out there, like you have these open source repos where you put out a ton of material, but you also like listen to the community. When somebody like pointed out something or whatever, like I think you're active in like having those conversations and like learning yourself, like or like upgrading your own knowledge about these things and like putting those back into your articles. And
I think it's important if you want to share content, make sure that if there is a mistake that you can update it quickly. I don't know, it's like my biggest fear to accidentally spread something that is like incorrect, which is also just, I guess, kind of a perfectionism thing. But sometimes I just feel so embarrassed when something is so wrong. And like, how could I don't know, I just feel guilty for then sharing that, and maybe, you know, people read it and then they also think that and then they share that. It's like kind of like a snowball effect. I never want to share something that's incorrect. So it's also a responsibility to then, as you said, listen to your users and update it. And it's a lot of maintenance, you know, content.
It is, But. And then, so you have the JavaScript quizzes, GitHub repo, which has like, I think we pulled it up yesterday. It was like 60,000.
I know. I think the last time I looked at it, it was like 10,000. So yesterday it was a complete surprise. Yeah, no.
Is that your biggest project?
Probably, but like I'm just a Markdown engineer or something. I don't know, but my biggest project is Markdown. I should definitely update that, or at least do something with that. I've been wanting to like make a website or an app for it for a while.
Well, you made a course with us.
Yeah, that's also
so
pretty good.
Recorded it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and then I think let's see, other big projects you have. You did patterns.dev with Addy. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we started that in, I believe, 2020. So that's based on one of Addy's older books. I don't remember exactly when he published it. I believe in 2011. And he asked if I wanted to work with him to kind of, you know, create a more modern version of that book with patterns that also included React patterns. And include some of the visualizations that I made, or like he saw my visualized post and then kind of in the same way visualize the pattern concepts and stuff like that. And it was very useful to me as well because, like, of course, I didn't go to college, so some of these computer science concepts I wasn't really introduced to because I didn't really need them. So understanding how, you know, people approached certain problems with these patterns, even though they're not always applicable to JavaScript. You know, a lot of them is like object-oriented stuff. But it also just taught me a lot. Like, you know, to not reinvent the wheel whenever I run into an issue. It's like, oh, these patterns exist if you, want to use them. So we also added some React patterns, which, of course, is also a lot to maintain because they always change. Now we also have, you know, server components, stuff like that. And also, I think 2 weeks ago or about 3 weeks ago, we added view patterns as well. So, you know, we're also just adding more frameworks, a lot of different patterns in the JavaScript world. But yeah.
Yeah, and you did a JavaScript and React patterns course for Frontend Masters as well.
True, that's
yeah. So that's kind of a theme. And then, so like any advice as far as like creating these projects or books?
Just create the content that you personally feel is missing. I think maybe it's not the best advice, but it's just what worked for me. I think where it often goes wrong is when people feel like they have to copy someone because they were successful and then they try to do the same thing. And I think people can quickly notice when someone actually put like love and effort into something, even if it's Markdown, even if it's nothing, compared to just kind of quickly creating content just to, you know, have a lot to tweet about. I mean, maybe that's me. I just don't really fall for that kind of content. I find it kind of annoying. So just, you know, and it's like quality over quantity. It's, even if you only publish maybe 4 times a year or 3 times a year and really just do it only when you feel like it, it's probably a lot, it's the opposite of what many people would say probably, that there's just like, you just ship as much as you can and you'll, you know, get a large following. But I'd rather have a smaller following with people that, you know, truly enjoy the content that I made and love to make than just having like 100,000 followers for content that I didn't really care about anyway. It feels kind of fake to me. I don't like that.
Yeah, that makes sense because all of your content is like very original. It's not derivative at all. When you see like other content creators, sometimes it does look like they're just rinsing and repeating some other blog post or whatever.
But again, in that case, I'm like, I wasn't making content because it wasn't missing for me. You know, like I just want to fill gaps, or at least gaps that I see like from my perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So like just making a quick blog post on whatever, I'm like, well, that there was no gap, that was already filled by someone else, and they did a great job, so I don't need to redo that. That doesn't make sense. I don't know. Yeah,
I think people had asked for a course on JavaScript patterns for like 6 years before you
Really?
did that one. Yeah,
Oh.
and it's just such a difficult topic, right? Because to apply things in generic patterns versus, you know, just being like this feature does this. It's like, okay, here's a pattern to solve X.
Yeah, and I also feel like it changed a lot recently, or like when, you know, frameworks kind of abstracted certain patterns away, or not even abstracted them away, but it's just different now. You know, if you're working with React, you don't really have to think about the factory pattern or stuff like that. It's just, like knowing what's still relevant and what, you know, might be unnecessary now is also difficult. And I think probably your audience is also very diverse. You know, you have like corporate employees, and then you have like indie hackers. Like their needs are so different, I can imagine. Sometimes that's also difficult to find the right balance for people. It's like, is the advice I give, I've never worked at like a large corporation, so maybe, you know, they're dealing with issues that I can give like no advice on. I don't know. So knowing like, or saying that in the content that you create, that like this is not like the solution to these types of issues, I think is also important. That you're not giving people a false impression, like this is the like holy solution to everything. But
I actually wrote a post on patterns. It was like JavaScript reactivity patterns. I think you and Addy retweeted it. Or whatever.
Yeah, that was really good. I read that. I was like, perfect. Chef's kiss.
Yeah, thank you. Like that was like all of the patterns that I've used throughout my career. It was like, here, these are the things that I've actually used.
Yeah.
Here, you know, I'm sure there are more, but
that is so much better. Also, when you've personally, like, you understand when you had to use them and why, versus like these exist and now remember it in case you ever run into an issue where you might need them. Like for me, I don't remember things if I cannot apply it right away. Mm-hmm. So just having random knowledge in my head, it doesn't work. Like I'll forget about it.
That's kind of going back to, you were talking about the education system didn't really work for you. Versus like your path is like direct to the thing. Like I'm just going to learn it and I'm going to apply it right away.
Whenever I'm interested in something, I learn it and I want to be really good at it. And then I just hope that other people enjoy it as well. And, or at least like with tech in that case, like, again, I just got lucky that whatever I was interested in and apparently good at, that people enjoyed it. And that, you know, it's luck, I guess.
That's awesome. So I guess that led into kind of like speaking and teaching, right? Like through...
Yeah, I mean, it's not something I was like, it's not something, like, it doesn't really fit with my personality. I don't really care about, like, I guess, public speaking, stuff like that. Teaching, probably just because I enjoy helping people, or at least talking about what I'm really passionate about. I guess public speaking, like, doing conference talks, I've done it quite a few times now, and I don't like it, or at least, like, you know, 5 minutes prior, I'm like, why did I do this? I'm so stressed out. And then on stage, I just always get a blackout. And also, my notes never work. You know, you have, like, the keynote slides there and then the notes. And because I always add a lot of animations, it's pretty important to me to get the timing right. Otherwise, the entire presentation is a mess. Like, the past 3 presentations, the notes didn't align with what was in my keynotes. I was like, all right, perfect. And I am so bad at just coming up with, like, random stuff. Because, like, even just talking is very difficult for me because I'm always thinking about, like, 10,000 things at the same time. And, yeah, like, in my head, I'm, like, 10 steps ahead of what I'm actually saying. But at the same, I like to be out of my comfort zone. So, you know, public speaking, it's definitely out of my comfort zone. But I've grown a lot from it. Like, I know, you know, like, not what my limits are, but at that moment, like, why do I feel uncomfortable? Could I have done anything to prevent feeling like that? In most cases, no. But yeah, it's still good. Like, and people seem to enjoy the talks I give.
Yeah. I mean, I've watched a few and they're excellent.
Yeah, I have not watched any of them, so it's just cringe. Or like then, you know, afterwards, like my friends would just play it like out loud with my voice. I just run away. I don't want to hear it. It's just, it's bad. But no, I always want to do a good job because I still feel like, you know, people, you know, came to the conference, they're still paying attention to me. So it's, I put a lot of pressure on myself, but I like that. It's like,
yeah, but you care about getting the information out. You're
Yeah.
like, okay, this is what I have to do.
Yeah, and
Get
also,
out of my comfort zone and I'm going to do it.
yeah, and I just don't like, conference talks where people have like 2 slides with like one word on it, and then there's this talk all the time. I can't pay attention. I can't stay focused. So again, I'm just giving the presentation that I wish other people gave, like, to me.
Yeah. Yeah, they're a lot more informative compared to like a normal tech talk, right?
Yeah,
You
I just want to get to the point. I was like, this is it. Okay, like, now you do whatever you want with it. Yeah, I don't really care about, like, I don't know, like, the performative part. I don't know. I should get better at it. I think I really envy those people, that can really, like, engage with the audience and really, like, tell a story. It's not me. I don't think I should try to be that person. You should know your strengths and weaknesses and just, like, focus on your strengths, but
I started giving conference talks probably around your age or whatever, 2007. And and I was really doing it because I wanted to teach. And so I jam-packed my slides full of stuff, kind of like you're doing, except you're way better at it than me by default. But yeah, I looked at the reviews. They're like, great information, but it looked like he didn't even want to be there.
I have to watch them. I'd love to see that. Maybe I'll feel a bit better about myself.
Well, unfortunately, back then they weren't recorded.
Oh, too bad.
But yeah, it was like, like the original jQuery conferences, and Fluent Conf was a big one back then, and stuff like that. So none of these things exist anymore.
How old are you?
I know, I'm ancient.
Yeah. Well, be happy that they didn't record it, because with me, it's now permanently on the internet. If I ever screw up, it's there.
But even your first one was great. So you should do it more because you're excellent at it. But yeah, how about like any advice you would give to people who are afraid to give their first
be afraid.
Talk?
It's scary. No, I think. Yeah, honestly, actually, that was about. It was like, don't, like, I used to always think that people giving conference talk, or like the seasoned people weren't scared, like they felt comfortable doing it. But honestly, everyone I meet in like the presenters room, they're all terrified. Like everyone still gets like stage fright, and they're still like, oh my God, what am I doing here? Like imposter syndrome kind of. Preparation is very important. I'm really bad at like preparation. I always wait for the very like last second to get everything like done and finished. But just pick a topic that you're really interested in, and give the presentation that you want to have out there and isn't out there yet. It seems very straightforward and very easy, but also just, try to pick your own style, like try to be unique, not in an annoying way, but I think people then like kind of connect that to like your kind of branding. It's like, oh, this person gives these types of talks. And you also kind of get into your own like comfort bubble that way. It's like, this is just kind of my stuff, like my style, and people enjoy it, and you can just like repeat that many times. Of course, like talking about different topics, but it helps to kind of like get stuff out there quicker, I find. But it's scary, and you just gotta deal with that. It's I don't know what else to say.
It reminds me of this quote, and I don't know who, somebody will have to look it up or whatever, but it's all about like, if you create something that you think others want, that's like, it just ends up being kind of like, blah.
Exactly.
Right? Versus like, if you create something from your perspective, what you want to see in the world, like that is art.
Yeah.
And then.
Yeah. And I think people they feel that like vibe that you give out. Like if you're really, passionate about what you're presenting or like creating, like same with the stuff I just said, but people feel that even if it's like subconsciously. Like I also feel when people give a presentation, kind of like a marketing presentation, they don't really care about it. Everyone's kind of just like, yeah, whatever. Like, I don't know. Like it doesn't really stick. And then people that I see presenting about stuff they really do care about, and it's just unique. I still remember, certain presentations that were just really good. Like this, it wasn't even about the engage or how good that speaker was at presenting. It was just, you feel the love that they have toward that project or product. That just resonates with everyone.
Absolutely. So. And that kind of like led to your job at Vercel, right? You worked there for a couple of years.
Yeah. So that was kind of my first kind of DevRel job, because I did a lot of like speaking and writing content on the side, but that was like on the side of my full-time like software engineering job. So this was kind of, and I was so comfortable just like coding like day in, day out. And I wasn't really, socializing with anyone. And even though I was online, it was still like, I'm just always in my comfort zone of like coding, working on the projects that I enjoy working on. But I wasn't really getting out of that comfort zone, or like less and less. And then I got the opportunity to do DevRel at Vercel. And initially I wasn't like really thinking about doing DevRel like full time. It didn't, like, I enjoy coding and engineering more than, speaking. As I said, like I'm uncomfortable like with public speaking. It's terrifying, but that's why I did it. I was like, I want to feel more uncomfortable more often. And of course, like Vercel is still a great company. Like the people working there, you're building a great network there as well. And the colleagues that I have now, like if I have a problem, I can easily reach out to really intelligent people. So yeah, I felt like it was a good combination to just try it out and see what happens, and that's been good.
Yeah, and then you've been there for a couple of years. You're still technically there, right? But you're just on a sabbatical. Is that correct?
I'll probably be back end of February. Okay. But I also just kind of want to I want to make sure that I still want to do DevRel, or maybe I just want to go back to engineering. Because I think doing DevRel full time is very difficult for me, because I'm not I am creative, but I need to have a reason to write about something. And when you're just only doing DevRel, I don't have a reason, because I don't run into the problems myself anymore unless someone else tells me. It's like, we have this problem, now write about it. I can't do that. I need to understand the problem. I need to have felt the frustration and emotion that comes with it, and then I can write about it to, help fix that. So I think that's very difficult for me. I cannot just like be creative full time. And also when people then tell me, like, you need to have this like creative stuff ready by maybe the end of the month, I can't force myself to be creative if I don't have the motivation to, get it out there. So yeah, that's also, again, it's a comfort zone thing, I guess. And I'm learning more about myself and just how I work by having experienced that. But yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. DevRel it's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you ran into a lot of real world problems. You were able to write about them and whatever, and you're kind of like, all right, I wrote about a lot of these things. I talked about a lot of these things, and now I'm looking to hit my head against the next problem. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm more of a logical person. I enjoy, I guess, coding more than writing about coding. But it's a lot of people that they don't see that. Like, they only see my content part. So it's it's funny. I guess I'm kind of two people. I'm the person that people perceive online, which is also very different for everyone, of course. Yeah. And then the person I actually am, which is just coding and being boring and just hiding in a room and socially awkward, and I don't want to talk to anyone. And I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's what we're always looking for at Frontend Masters, is like teachers who actually do the thing, right? Because there's a lot of people who will be like, oh yeah, I'll write a book on XYZ if it makes me X amount of money or whatever. Yeah. It's like, that's a different vibe than somebody who's like, no, I ran into this problem at Netflix, or ran into this problem building this project, and now I'm gonna like share it from my perspective. Yeah,
I mean, it's also very like, because this was like a couple years ago when I was still active on Instagram, and I never, like, I got followers there, but I never wanted to be like a tech influencer. That just, it seemed weird to me. I was just like, well, the fact that I got a lot of followers is very good, but I'm not, like, I'm still just, coding. But, like, I never did, like, brand deals or anything, even though there was so much money involved in that. And I totally understand why people did it. And, like, you become, like, but I think at that point, you're kind of just selling who you really are. I don't know. But I never wanted to do that, like, pretending to be someone that I wasn't. Because but kind of similar to what you were saying, there's so much money in just like writing books about certain things that you kind of know something about, or whatever you're creating, and turning that down to be, or to stay authentic to yourself. It's difficult, but 100% worth it. But depends on your situation, I guess.
For sure. So with that, like, I guess we kind of talked about what you're on the sabbatical. Do you have anything like that you're excited about in this time?
Honestly, just kind of because I was really stressed out. I mean, I've been burnt out, I think, for like a year, which is difficult to admit, but I was like, why is my brain not working the way it used to work anymore? And it was so frustrating. And first I was like, am I just getting old? Like, is it just am I just deteriorating? I don't know.
Definitely not.
Well, no, and then it was just, I didn't recognize myself anymore. I was like, I'm very addicted to working hard, and I just couldn't do it anymore. I hated it. It was like, I don't know, it's scary. It's like, okay, but then who am I,
Yeah.
But I think it's important for me to really learn how to really let go of something, because even now when I'm like relaxing, I can't relax. I always feel so much pressure on myself being there by myself. But I think I should really just clear my head, as everyone says, and just kind of go back to, okay, why did I start this whole thing? Why am I in this position now? And how can I get out of this feeling, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, that, like, I went through, I mean, obviously different circumstances, but I was just, like, cranking out tons and tons of work. And, like, it obviously, like, helped my career a ton. I was speaking, I was teaching, I was writing hundreds of blog posts and doing consulting gigs and all this stuff. And I made a startup and whatever. And I got to this point where I just, like, I couldn't even open my laptop for 2 weeks. I was just like, I slept like 14 hours a day. And I couldn't even, like, that little clamshell on the laptop, I couldn't even, like, pull it open. I was, like, that depressed, or not depressed, sorry, but that, what's the burnout, right? Yeah, it was that burnt out, right? Because I just put myself out there. And it's, like, those times of, like, acceleration, and then, like, eventually there's just a crash. It just, it just happens. And then, you know, from there, like, I was able to spend a lot of time and, like, self-reflect. And I'm like, oh, wow. Like, the reason why people brought me on these consulting gigs, or why I was getting all these teaching opportunities, it was like, I'm actually really good at taking technical concepts and, like, elevating the team around me. So I was 21 leading a, you know, project with, like, 400-page project for an enterprise with, like, 14 people. Like, you know, I was just, like, really young and successful because I did that. But then, at some point, it's just like, you have to slow down and reflect. And, like, and that's the period that you're at. You're just like, okay, I'm reflecting. Like, out of that came, for me, was like, okay, these are the things that I'm actually really good at. I'm actually really good at, you know, explaining technical concepts. So I'm going to do that. What does that mean? Okay, whatever. It takes years and years and years to figure out, like, those learnings. Like, what does it mean for me for the rest of my career? But it's cool you're, like, taking that time. And it's just, I think you've just output an absolute astronomical amount of stuff for early in your career, and I think it's awesome. So, like, I guess with that, like, do you have any, like, well, I think we talked about, you know, getting your plane license, plane license, flying whatever license, but, like, is there any travel or anything that you're really excited about?
I haven't planned anything yet, but I'm honestly just, like, looking forward to this creating structure in my life, which sounds really boring, but I would just want to, like, be productive again and learn entirely new skills, like, more about business and investing and just, like, the stuff that I get to deal with every day, but I've never really been able to focus on it. So just, like, learning entirely new skills and just creating new neural connection. Like, I even have that with a pilot license, right? Like, it's just new stuff that is just so different from, like, programming and software engineering. It's just, like, a breath of fresh air. You know, it's like, oh, I don't want to just take this sabbatical and still, like, code the whole time. I just want to do something completely different. And then I'm sure that I'll just fall back to coding with a whole new perspective on everything. So, yeah it's just that.
Reminds me of, like, I took some time off with our last baby. We had our fourth kid. And I sat there and, like, I was like, I'm going to get my finances straight. Like, this is, like, I'm, like, 4 kids, 35. I'm like, it's time to get my finances straight. And so I created a checklist of, like, everything. I read a bunch of books and I just created a checklist. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. And so it was like, I don't know, it's like organization. And I did that with health too. I did the same thing. So I'll share my...
I need to have that checklist.
Yeah, I'll send it to you, the finance one. So thus far, do you feel like there are any, like, themes that kind of tied your career together?
Well, besides JavaScript, I don't know. Do you know? Do you think you know any of me? I don't.
No, I think it's a lot of what we talked about, right? Yeah. Like, just being willing to put your, you know, knowledge out there, like, as you learn and So I guess I just got lucky that the stuff that I need to learn is pretty original, and people see that as original content, and that's why they like it. So just, like, staying true to myself and creating the content that is missing and focusing on
the quality and not just, trying to create content to get a following or get likes. It probably would have worked for me or would have worked for anyone, but it won't make you happy, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
You should be proud of the content you create, I guess. Not that I am proud, but I think people should.
You should
do as I say, don't do as I do.
You should be proud of the content you create because it's excellent. So, all right, with that, I think that's a good time to wrap. So,
Sounds good.
Appreciate it being on the podcast.
Yeah,
Lydia.
Thank you again.
Thank you. Hey there, before you go, don't forget we're new at this. So any feedback, whether it's a like or subscribe, we'll take those, or a comment about what you didn't like or what you'd like to see more of in the future. We'll definitely incorporate that into the next episodes. I'm really enjoying these conversations. So any type of feedback would be fantastic, and especially sharing it with your friends and colleagues. So really appreciate it. Thanks for listening. See you in the next one.